Colts minicamp has come to a close for the 2025 offseason. So, who stood out and looked great? Which players might not have the best updates after the offseason practices? And how did you, the fans, perceive this year's minicamp? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast. As always, presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. I'm Drake Wally, co-host of the show, deputy editor for the website. And then, of course, we have Noah Gebert, analyst for the site and fellow co-host. This is we just mentioned it, Noah. We are officially in the dog days, where there is not going to be a damn thing to report. Yep. So they don't go back, as we just looked up here, they don't go back for training camp until July 22nd. So you are looking at a month and a half before the Colts will have news for the fans. But we have so much to talk about here. There was a lot that happened during the OTAs, during minicamp specifically, that we're going to kind of digest here. But how are you doing, man? How do you feel about this team after minicamp? And I'm excited to talk about this because you're talking about the entire 2025 season at stake here.
Yeah, feeling good. Overall, I don't know that there were a ton of questions that we got answered through minicamp. I mean, there's going to be so many ongoing questions, especially the big one at the quarterback position, that you really didn't get any clarity on just because of Anthony Richardson missing this time here in minicamp. So, yeah, I mean, good to see news coming out. Good to see at least photos and videos of people playing football, knowing that 40-day dry spell that's coming up that you just mentioned earlier. So, yeah, we're going to take this for what it was worth, but at the same time, enjoy that we got some news and updates because it's going to be a quiet period ahead.
Yeah, and the reason that this is such an important off season is that I really can't remember a year that had more hanging in the balance. I mean, you've got jobs are on the line. Like, we're not just talking players, we're talking coaches, we're talking GMs, we're talking front office executives. I mean, this entire franchise, its future hangs in the balance. They're at a crossroads. Jim Irsay just passed. So not only was there pressure before, and by the way, immense pressure, now there's pressure to make something happen, make the postseason, push or win that division title, because you want to honor Jim Irsay in the season after he passed the best that you can. So there's a lot on the line here, but it all starts in OTAs and in minicamp. Oh, man, we got some comments here. Donald, nice to see you, my friend. DSG Goodbar, we are doing fantastic. Paul Wilson, go Pacers. Hey, they're up 2-1, and they're teams that win or are at a 2-1 record after game 3 win 80% of the time.
Yeah.
So knock on wood here. Of course, Matherin had an absolute dog type of performance. So
yeah, and we appreciate you guys tuning into a Colts podcast to talk about veteran minicamp when the Pacers are in a final series. So I know this is the most exciting thing that's going on in Indiana sports right now. But yeah, we're lucky to get the updates we got.
Yeah, man. And, hey, when you're about to potentially bring a city its first NBA championship, we're happy you're here because that's something to watch. Tony, nice to see you, man. And Darth Raider, it feels good to be a Hoosier. Hey, you know what? All that needs to happen is the Colts need a franchise quarterback. Mm-hmm. And you've got yourself a trifecta. You got the Holy Trinity.
That's all.
That's all they need. Just go pluck one off a tree. But yeah, hey, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. As we mentioned, this is a huge off season. Everything hangs in the balance. Real quick, Noah, what do you think that this team has to do, just in a nutshell, to climb out of that crappy 9-8, 8-9 mediocrity that, some fans will say, well, hey, at least you're not the worst team. Well, now you don't have one of the top picks, right? You're not good enough to be at the end where you're competing for Super Bowl and you're cool with the 27th selection in the draft, but you're dead center in the middle where you're always getting 14, you're always getting 15, and it's football limbo for the Colts so far.
Yeah, what do they have to do? I think you already answered that question, whether you were being serious or not. I mean, they need to find a franchise quarterback, and I don't know. I know that's probably a little bit too optimistic going into this year, but at least this year they need to find some above average quarterback play in terms of league-wide ratings and how that would go, because you just didn't have it last year. You didn't have it with Anthony Richardson, and then based on how Daniel Jones has performed in the past, you don't have it with him either, so you need to expect one of those guys to take a massive leap in terms of the production that they've had and their ability to control an offense, just sustain something efficient on the offensive side of the ball. That's bottom line what the Colts need. And if they don't get anything other than that, then it's going to be probably another similar year that we've seen. That they can take some steps in some other areas. You're hoping Lou Anarumo's defense shows or gives you a little bit more. I guess just a little bit more than what Gus Bradley gave you in terms of diversity on the defensive side and really getting off the field on key third downs and not getting rid of that bend and don't break scheme that Gus Bradley kind of had and getting kind of away from that mindset. I think it was good to shift the mindset there. But I mean, as good as the defense can be, if you don't have a quarterback that's going to be able to run the offense, then you're going to be struggling no matter what.
Yeah, and when it's all said and done, it's just been a hellacious cycle of never-ending, searching, just yearning
Mm-hmm.
for that next guy that can take that snap under center, and you can just say to yourself, any given snap, you've got confidence, to put a button on it. I don't know if there was a time Anthony Richardson dropped back last year, minus, the first game where you were like, you're pretty confident, especially after that Packers game, So I think that it's going to be interesting. We'll have to see. There's a lot of ways that they can fix things, but we'll start off with arguably, the most important thing that anyone's going to talk about is quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel Jones gets thrust into doing everything since Richardson's out with an injury right now. And Steichen is very pleased with what Daniel Jones has been doing. It's good to hear that. And I never thought I'd say that because you thought you were saying it's good to hear that he's pleased with Anthony Richardson. Yep. But it's good to hear this because there's a real shot, Noah. As much as fans might not want to hear it, who the hell knows? It happened with Andrew Luck, where you kept thinking he was coming back from an injury. They shut him down, potentially for the whole season, and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he's looking for second opinions on the shoulder, basically because from the guy who did the surgery in the first place. Maybe he's just looking for a second opinion and hoping somebody's going to tell him he can get out on the field sooner than some other doctors are saying, or maybe it's something more serious. We're unfortunately not privy to the medical information that we would need to be able to make that or to discern that information. So yeah, you don't want to see Daniel Jones taking all the snaps just because everyone in the organization, pretty much every Colts fan, is kind of still holding out hope that Richardson can turn into what he needs to be to take this franchise to the next level. And you've got a guy who I think desperately needs all the reps that he can get. We've talked about that since he was drafted coming out of Florida and the amount of inexperience that he had at the college level and just not playing a ton of snaps and then getting into the NFL and missing a significant amount of time in both of his first two seasons. He's just a raw player and a raw quarterback who needs the snaps. And he's not getting it here. So you came into a situation in minicamp where you were probably expecting to split those quarterback reps between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson pretty much 50-50. That's a lot of valuable snaps that he's just not getting, and a lot of valuable snaps on the flip end of that Daniel Jones is getting to show that he can run the offense and impress Shane Steichen. And that quote, very pleased, I know that's probably a lot of lip service that's going on right now. I don't think you're going to get Shane Steichen saying he's disappointed in the way that these people are playing in veteran minicamp this early in the offseason. You're not going to get that. So it's mostly going to be good things you hear out of Shane Steichen. But if you're going to hear a good thing, you want it to be about the guy who's taking the snaps under center, right?
Yeah. And, just to kind of hash it out here, Daniel Jones, okay, and I put a post out on X that exploded, and I basically said he's got if Richardson can't go week one, or if he gets beat out for that starting position, I think it'd be more likely that he's still somehow hurt.
Yeah,
and because the Colts aren't going to say, let's say that they know right now that there's a chance that he might not make week one with that shoulder. Unless it's conclusive that he's not going to make week one with that shoulder, they're not just going to go out there and say, there's a chance that he might not play until, week 8 or something. Yeah. So, but I do think it's more likely that Jones starts because Richardson can't. I do still have confidence in Richardson, but Jones has the best offensive line overall he's played with. Yes, there's question marks on
Yeah.
Bordolini at center and Gonsalves at guard, but you still have Braden Smith, Quentin Nelson, and Bernard Ryman. One is a rising star in Ryman. Nelson is the best guard in football any given game day. And Braden Smith is a pillar. I know he's been hurt, but man, the guy still plays football, and it's not easy to find tackles as good as guys like Braden Smith and Bernard Ryman. So he's got the best O-line. As far as the coaching, I still think it's better. I think Shane Steichen's more of a quarterback guy. I think that he can really help Daniel Jones. He did it with Rivers. He did it with Herbert. He did it with Hurts. He's trying like hell with Richardson. So the guy definitely can quarterback whisper, if you will. The scheme fits beautifully. I'm not saying that the Giants didn't have a good one, especially in 2022, but Saquon Barkley was the best receiver. I think he led the team in receptions that year. Your running back leads the team in catches. And if I'm wrong on that, he was second.
Yeah.
And then the last one is that he has a talented supporting cast. Okay. I mean, he's got Downs, he's got Pittman, he's got Pierce. Mitchell, if he starts to progress, my goodness, you've got a fourth wide receiver. Then you've got Jonathan Taylor. Then you've got Tyler Warren. Daniel Jones has a real opportunity here, and it's bad for him, though, for one reason. If he goes out there and sucks, no more excuses. You literally were given the best surroundings you could be given.
Yeah, I think if you ask Daniel Jones if he's ready for that opportunity, like he's gonna want that opportunity. He's not gonna want to hide behind that and like have any shadow of a doubt. If he like gets beat out by Anthony Richardson, at least he's not out there showing any flaws. He's gonna want to go out there and show what he's got with this supporting cast. You mentioned Anthony Richardson and that injury and the chance that Daniel Jones starting week 1 might be because Anthony Richardson's not ready. I think there's also a good chance that Anthony Richardson is, I guess, technically healthy and ready by week 1, but just because of how many snaps that he's missing, I guess here with veteran minicamp, and then as we go into training camp and through the preseason, if he starts to miss too much time, I think you just get to a point where you're feeling too uncomfortable to throw Anthony Richardson in there week 1. When you've got, I mean, he's a guy who's had questions, right? There were questions at the end of last year, benched pretty late in the year, came back and didn't fully answer all those questions to be the no doubt starter at that point. And I mean, he's a guy who's got to earn his job back and has to be on the field to earn that job. I mean, he might get to a point where he misses enough time that he doesn't have enough time in training camp or preseason to answer the questions that the Colts had. And they just feel a little bit more comfortable going with Daniel Jones early in the season. So yeah, this injury might not be as serious as keeping him out till around week 8, a scenario you threw out. I mean, it very well could. It very well might not be. But I think the bottom line is he needs to get on the field as soon as possible, whether it's the preseason, like the Lucas Oil turf, or it's out there at Grand Park. He needs to get out there as soon as possible so he can answer some of the questions that he's left for himself.
Yeah, and hey, we're not sitting here saying Daniel Jones is, a resurrected quarterback. I mean, he's done nothing, and we've said on the show, in fact, we'll just go ahead and get to Paul Wilson's super chat. You're the man. You're the man, Paul. Thank you so much. I'm very concerned about the offense, and I just hope I'm dead wrong. Sounds like you aren't concerned. Oh, no, Paul. Me and Noah are not out here saying – we're saying that Jones is surrounded by the best situation on many fronts that he's ever had. And he's got an organization that's put those pieces in place for Richardson, and he gets to take advantage of it. So that's it. Because remember, Noah, we said you don't want to have to put that 4-letter word on Richardson yet, bust, because he's still not there. But Danny Dimes, as they've ridiculously called this guy, he is so far, by all regards, a 6th overall pick. Yeah, he's a draft bust. So we're not saying, Paul, that we think he's just going to come out of the water as this amazing quarterback. We're just saying that he's got no more excuses.
At least on my end, Paul, if we're talking about this and how it might sound like I'm not concerned, I think it's just because my concern level really hasn't changed that much. I was equally concerned with Anthony Richardson being the starting quarterback as I am with Daniel Jones being the starting quarterback. I'm not sure the level of play that you're going to get from either of those guys is really that different. I guess really where my concern comes in is like what the long term aspects look like. If you decide that Daniel Jones is better than Anthony Richardson, I think that definitely and drastically changes what your future plans are going forward. Probably what the Ursay sisters and the new ownership's future plans are going forward. I think that changes a lot. But I mean, I'm not any more concerned than I was, but that's because I've always been concerned this whole offseason and going after the end of last season and how things shook out at the quarterback position. I'm not any more confident than I was at that point. But the offense is what it is. Those questions aren't answered, but we know what the solution is at this point, or what the solution the Colts are going with at this point.
Yeah, and we'll have to let that play out. That's going to be a big one. But I did want to highlight a comment all the way up here. 141 JM. Good morning from Perth, Western Australia. That is absolutely freaking awesome. Man, you're up watching us in the AM over there in Perth. Thank you, man. That is absolutely awesome. We really appreciate that kind of support, and we hope we're giving you good content. You know, we do the best we can, and that's awesome. Thank you so much for your support there. But yeah, so we get to we get to this. Okay, hold on. I do have to highlight one more comment here. The Colts as a team need to start talking about winning football games. Player prep, the process, the QB's age and experience should no longer be the focus for the team. Can we change the conversation? Let's talk about winning games. What's the game plan for winning? Getting the right quarterback. Michael, they've got the defensive pieces in place. They've got the defensive coach in place now. Will he perform? We'll see. He's got a history of doing great, and of course, the past couple seasons in Cincy were pretty rough. He had a very massive lack of talent outside of Trey Hendrickson. So now you're giving him some serious talent. The offensive weapons are there. The offensive line, minus a couple unproven dudes, it's there. Quarterback, man. Quarterback is literally the biggest question mark at this point.
And I don't think organizationally they're not focusing on winning. I mean, the focus is going to be on winning. Just the downside of being the Colts right now is that's unfortunately an uphill battle because of the situation you're at quarterback and kind of the depth that hasn't been there in the past, and just the way things that needed to be shaken up after 8 years of Chris Ballard's tenure. So I think, the focus is there. It's winning begets winning. And the Colts, unfortunately, haven't had a lot of that. So it's hard to build that momentum. I think organizationally that focus is there. I'm not questioning whether or not Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, the new owners are taking that seriously enough. It's just more so the situation that they're in. I think pretty much every Colts fan, Colts analyst recognizes that's an uphill battle, not something that's going to flip overnight.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Michael, trust me, they want to win. There's so much on the line. If they don't win, a lot of people are getting fired. So, but yeah, we'll go ahead and jump over to, we've already burned to almost 20 minutes. That's what happens when we talk about QB with this team. So the Colts invested the 14th overall selection in Tyler Warren. And guess what? He is out there making plays. So, I'm just going to go ahead and quote fellow deputy editor, co-deputy editor of Indianapolis Colts on SI.com, a credentialed media member, just overall legend, and that is Jake Arthur. Warren appears to be the guy that the Colts have been hoping for, who opens things up for the middle of the field. He's had several yards after catch ops, caught a wide open touchdown from 20 yards out in 7-on-7s on Tuesday, and caught a downfield corner route on Thursday where two defenders were crossed right in front of his eye line as the ball got to him. It basically, me and Andrew Moore said this on the Bleacher Report. It looks like he's basically tight end one.
Yeah.
I will say at the end of the day, though, and no, I'm sure you'll agree, it is just 7-on-7s. You're missing 4 defensive players, but the offense is missing four offensive players. So what are your thoughts on that update? I think that not only are you super pumped that, hey, so far it's working out, but last year was such a void that you're just happy to have a solution potentially.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned that 7-on-7, even 11-on-11 when it's not full contact. You're taking that for what it's worth. But I think the point still stands there. I mean, if he's showing what he is and what they hope him to be when you get into the time of the actual games, we haven't been able to see a Shane Steichen offense where they have somebody that can control the middle of the field like that. They've mentioned that. I mean, before the draft this offseason, they mentioned that a ton. Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen both mentioning that they need help at tight end. They need somebody that can control the middle of the field. If Tyler Warren is that guy, we'll get to see the ways that they can leverage the defense that way and the ways that that can affect the run game, both the inside and the outside run game, and how you can control the middle of the field with Tyler Warren and Josh Downs, and how you can open things up on the perimeter for Pittman and Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell. So, yeah, I think it's just good for the sake that maybe we get to see Shane Steichen and the offense how it was meant to be run, instead of kind of going out there and fielding a position group that was 32 out of 32 in the NFL in terms of production, and just kind of trying to make your offense work around that disadvantage that you innately have when you don't have the horses there to run at tight end. So yeah, getting somebody that's versatile and can be lined up at multiple spots at tight end, can make plays either way. And then also I think a guy that you can throw in and have some wrinkles, running wildcat quarterback power or doing shovel passes, motioning as the H-back, just different ways, lining him up on the slot and trying to get some matchups out that way. There's a lot of ways you can use him. I'm really just excited for what this means, not just for Tyler Warren, but for the offense as a whole and what Shane Steichen can draw up.
Yeah, and it gives the defense even more to think about because you got yards after catch with a tight end. That's a problem. I mean, he's going to catch easy short passes and maybe be able to take a 4 or 5 yard, hitch completion and turn it into 9 or 10. That's a difference between a first down on third down and not. So I mean, before we continue here, we're going to get to this super chat. Truitt, legend. Thank you so much, my friend. Will Riley Leonard get some play at July camp with the third string? Unless Richardson's still sitting there doing mental reps. In that case, he is officially the backup quarterback. What are your thoughts, real brief, on Riley Leonard? I think that he's got leadership ability. He fits the offense. He's got that athleticism. It's really a matter of his arm and arm strength, but I don't think you could have asked for a better kid to join your team, and now look at that. He's thrust into the backup role.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, you would think before going into training camp, no, this isn't a thing you're going to have to think about or worry about. But, I mean, Anthony Richards is not on the field right now. Daniel Jones one snap away from Riley Leonard being your starting quarterback, which is just frankly a disaster. So, yeah, I think there's an opportunity for him to get some run. I think that could open up. I mean, people take rest days and training camp and OTAs if they are showing any signs of inflammation, soreness, whatever. People are super cautious. So I mean, yeah, if he's healthy and willing to go the whole time, then he's going to be able to take some valuable snaps. If it probably not with the first team, but for the second team, I think that's going to be exponentially more valuable than just with the third team guys, because then you're throwing to guys like Ashton Doolin and A.D. Mitchell, and you're not throwing to guys like, no offense to Coleman Owen and Ajou. You're not throwing to those guys, and you're getting some guys who are actually going to be on the field in the NFL during the regular season. So I think, yeah, you get some more looks with that, and I think the system, they drafted him for a reason because I think he fits. And he can bring things in the RPO game and the quarterback run game that the Colts already have with guys like Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. And yeah, you mentioned the leadership aspect. I don't think the conversation of Riley Leonard, there's always going to be fans out there just because of where he's from and the team that he landed on. There's always going to be conversations from fans wanting to see more of him. But frankly, we don't want to be in a position where we have to see more of him. I think more so it's the virtue of people losing a little bit of hope in Anthony Richardson, people kind of knowing what they have in Daniel Jones, and Riley Leonard sort of represents the untapped potential that we haven't quite seen yet, and that's always going to be exciting. But we'll see what he gets done during preseason and during training camp. I wouldn't expect it to be anything more than the fun stuff that we saw from Sam Ehlinger the last few years. But I mean, it's always fun to hope, right?
Yeah, and hey, knock on wood, Daniel Jones, he has had his struggles with injuries. Riley Leonard, ladies and gentlemen, is just one Daniel Jones injury away from being the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah. So that's something to really think about. This is why you get three quarterbacks. You just never know. But thank you so much, Truitt. But yes, at the end of the day, Tyler Warren has really shown that he's got an ability to potentially be a weapon. Now,
Mhm.
you haven't put the pads on yet. You're not playing against elite defenses yet, or cover linebackers that could probably stick with you. But he's already seeming like he's more of a threat than the rest of the tight end room. And hey,
Mhm.
by all regards, to give Drew Ogletree, Mo, Alley Cox, and Will Mallory credit, none of them were really drafted to be a Tyler Warren,
Yeah.
right? Like, so they each specialize in something that's unique and will help the team in situations. But goodness, you don't want that kind of limited ability
Yeah.
to be a starter.
Yeah, and I'm a sucker for a tight end that can make plays after the catch and can break some tackles. I think that's so rare to find. Just even NFL wide, there's only so many tight ends in the league that can actually be a threat after they catch the ball. Yeah, I think it'll be fun to watch something like that happen in the Colts offense and see if you can get some of these short passes. If you get a quarterback that can complete the short passes, that you get somebody who can take a short pass and turn it into something special. So yeah, we're not obviously not going to see that during minicamp, even training camp. We're going to have to wait till we get the full pads on and see what he can do after the catch. But I think that's really where he's going to shine. So good. I mean, yeah, good to see that in a non-contact setting he's impressing, because I think when the pads come on, he's going to be even more impressive.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you drafted this guy to do exactly what he's doing, and he's doing it early. He's getting stuff done, and he looks like the clear cut starter. And it might not, it's probably not close. And that's
Yep.
no offense to anybody behind him, but yes. So Tyler Warren, he has looked absolutely like what the Colts drafted him to be. This one we can kind of rapid fire through, and one of them really maybe get some playing time here. And
Mhm.
I'll get into who I think should be absolutely concerned about Justin Wally doing well here in a bit. But what are your thoughts on Justin Wally? I know that I wasn't the biggest fan of the pick when it happened. I kind
Yeah.
of warmed up to it a bit, but I know that you weren't the biggest fan of the pick, and here he is out there making plays for the defense.
Yeah, I think it makes the conversation a little interesting in terms of the defensive backs, and you're trying to figure out where he fits in and where that playing time is going to come from. I mean, if he continues to impress, obviously let's not get ahead of ourselves. He's a third round rookie. We're not going to throw him on the starting field or on the field as a starter without reason and a lot more impressions than just a veteran minicamp. But you start to question if he does continue with this level of play and he shows he's a guy, then where do those snaps come from? I think, unfortunately for me, for Stats Matt, for other Jalen Jones lovers, I think it's Jalen Jones that is the most likely to fall in terms of uh, the easiest path for playing time for Justin Wally. If he's going to beat out a guy, I think that's the most likely where it's going to be. I know we've talked about him being that backup inside at slot with Kenny Moore, but I think he's also very much in play on the outside. That's where almost all of his experience at Minnesota came, was on the outside, and I think he's just by virtue of pretty much being the only guy that's capable of playing inside outside of Kenny Moore. He's just by de facto, he's the de facto backup at that spot. But I think, yeah, really, you got to start maybe looking for him to push for some snaps at outside corner. Jalen Jones, and as much as we talk about him and respect his game and where he came from and the investment that he was and what he turned out to be, he's I mean, it's him and Charvarius Ward on the outside. Lou Anarumo picked Charvarius Ward. He did not pick Jalen Jones. We've talked about that with a couple guys in a couple positions in the past, I mean, this new regime on the defensive side of the ball, they don't really have any ties to guys that came before them. Guys, I mean, we mentioned that with Juju Brents. I mean, we can throw his name out there. I think that's another thing that looks a little bit rough for Juju Brents. If Justin Wally's name keeps coming up, then that's not a good look for Juju Brents there at that point, because yeah, that's one more guy you have to fight to make the roster to get some playing time. But yeah, I think that's valuable if you've got a guy like Justin Wally. I mean, cornerback's a valuable position, whether it's inside the nickel, whether it's outside, and it's always a position that you've got to have depth at, because I mean, yeah, we mentioned that at quarterback, everybody's one snap away, and one snap away at corner. I mean, one play at corner, one disastrous snap at corner can lead to 7 points for the offense. So you've got to have some guys you can rely on to be depth, if not a starter.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is Juju Brents, man. I think right now the way you're looking at this depth chart is you're looking. We'll just assume Jalen Jones is two. Charvarius Ward, Jalen Jones. Okay, then you've got Kenny Moore.
Mhm.
Then you've got, let's see here, Sam Womack. All right, Justin Wally. He's probably potentially going to beat out Sam Womack. I would assume he's going to. And then you're talking about him pushing, he'll probably play some nickel, but I mean, then you're talking about him pushing Jalen Jones.
Yep.
Juju Brents is literally at the end of that list. And like you said, Anarumo has no ties to Brents.
Mm-hmm.
Brents fit Gus Bradley's scheme. Juju Brents, he prefers those faster guys. Not to say he's going to shy away from a guy with freakish athleticism like that. But Juju Brents might need to have the best football he's ever played of his life to keep his job. What do you think about number 29? I mean, the potential's clearly there, but 11 out of 34 games, that's incredibly discouraging.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely. I feel like we rag on Juju Brents quite a bit, and hate to turn this Justin Wally praise segment into a doom scenario for Juju Brents, but I very much think the guys that Juju Brents are competing with are Corey Ballantyne and Sam Womack, not so much Jalen Jones and Justin Wally. That's kind of the level that he's at right now, in terms of the trust that he's garnered within the organization, within this staff. And I mean, that's just a bleak outlook when you've got. I mean, those are the guys you're competing with, and those are two guys who have played outstanding special teams in the past in their careers. Not something that you have to your credit. So, yeah, it's not looking great for Juju Brents in terms of that roster outlook and just how things are shaping up in the cornerback room. It's possible trade potential, or even cut potential, which is something rough to say about a former second round pick and a local kid and somebody who's had all this talent and everybody wants them to succeed. It'd be great. I mean, yeah, I just talked about how valuable the cornerback position is. The more depth you have, the more people you can trust to go out there and play. That's a good thing, but at this point, you just can't trust him to be on the field or be available for him to play.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how that pans out. It's very sad for Juju Brents, but he has to stay healthy before he can do anything. So next up is Hunter Wohler. He's having a strong off season so far. Good that he's doing that. He was drafted to be a multiple type guy. You can play safety, you can play linebacker. Of course, the Colts miss on Jermaine Pratt. They were not able to get him. He signs for a cheap deal with the Raiders. Could we be looking at, Hunter Wohler, who could provide safety depth for you and linebacker depth, because he's having some strong practices, but there's still so much more ahead.
Yeah, and we'll touch on this later in the episode, but I mean, yeah, he's getting starting opportunities at linebacker just based on how the current things are working out. I think that's probably not where the Colts intend to play him. I think I've mentioned this in a past episode, how you normally, for most NFL teams, can't garner much based off of what jersey numbers are, but the Colts are generally pretty on the nose in terms of positions, and historically they go by traditional jersey numbers at those positions. They gave him a number in the 30s. They compared him to Daniel Sorensen, a former a safety for the Chiefs that Chris Ballard selected. So yeah, I mean, I expect him to get more run at safety than linebacker, but I mean, right now, just with the depth at safety and really the lack of even starting caliber players that are available to you at linebacker, he's being forced or has the opportunity to impress at both spots. This is the one that I kind of put the most pause on, though, out of these three names that we threw up here on the ticker of Justin Wally, A.D. Mitchell, Hunter Wohler. There's only so much that you can impress. I think the most or the highest level that Hunter Wohler can reach here in terms of impressing is like, okay, he's going to make the team. We still have to temper our expectations as a seventh round hybrid position player. You don't know where those snaps on defense are coming out. So hopefully this him impressing on the defensive side of the ball just shows that he has the football IQ to be valuable and reliable in there on special teams, because I think that's probably where this is headed for Hunter Wohler.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's okay that he's headed towards special teams, because, like you said, he's not an otherworldly draft pick. He's probably not going to be this high-level player. So if you can get some kind of production out of his seventh-round selection, that's fantastic. The only thing is you've seen Chris Ballard be able to select guys like Zaire, like Jalen Jones, that have come out, Will Fries, that have just come out there and been able to start and play effective football.
Yeah. And these guys, like late round linebackers like that, Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed, didn't really touch defense their first couple years and were standouts on special teams before they earned that starting job. So that's where we got to start with Hunter Wohler. Is yes, we'll take the excitement that's buzzing a little bit out of minicamp that he's one of those names, of those standout guys that, I mean, you don't usually hear people mention 7th-round rookies as people who are standing out this early in the summer. So you're excited about that, but yeah, also recognizing the fact that he's going to make that impact on special teams, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, and lastly, but certainly not least, is A.D. Mitchell. Adonai Mitchell. It says here in Jake's article, just as he did last year in this setting, second-year wide receiver A.D. Mitchell really stood out in team sessions, catching a high volume of balls in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s, primarily with the second group and quarterback Leonard. But Colts head coach Shane Steichen has noted the work he's put in this offseason. The team is just looking for consistency. Look, A.D. Mitchell caught 23 passes last year. He wasn't good. Now, as I wrote in an article, you can't – he was lazy at times. He just looked like he was lazily going after the football. But, man, Joe Flacco didn't throw it as much to Mitchell as he probably would have liked. Joe Flacco also, with the arm he's got, you'd think that he'd take more downfield chances. He's much more of a high percentage throw type guy. And then, of course, Richardson can't get anybody the football, but under 40 or 50% of the time with so many mouths to feed, it didn't really turn out to be a good year for Mitchell. But, man, here's the thing about him. He's a great separator, absolutely fantastic separator. He will burn you so bad with his speed. He's got crisp route running for a guy that's as young in his NFL career as he is, and he's explosive. A.D. Mitchell's a weapon. The only problem is you just didn't see the consistency. So it's great to see this, but he did this last year and then kind of laid a clunker in his rookie campaign.
Yeah, and I think Colts fans are probably a little jaded to this whole, and it's probably a phenomena league-wide that's going around, and the Colts fans are probably more used to it than usual, where you have this standout guy when it comes time to 7-on-7 and non-contact 11-on-11 in training camp. You've got, oh man, looks like Paris Campbell's really having a great training camp. This is his year. Oh man, Dante Moncrief, this is his year. Deron Carter was a big training camp name. Michael Strawn, big training camp name. I mean, there's just an endless amount of Colts wide receivers who've impressed during just training camp. Deion Kane, another name that people just get super excited about because I think it's fun to watch these 7-on-7 completions and how they're flashy. But I mean, yeah, consistency is what you need. We're not going to say he doesn't have the talent to do it. I mean, he has historically caught the ball pretty well, at least in college. Last year, he just was not catching the targets. He wasn't on the same page with his quarterback. So you want to see, or regardless of who the quarterback was, he wasn't on the same page with either of them. So you want to see him just kind of build that chemistry a little bit, be in the right spot at the right time, I think is way more important than, he got some separation on that route at this point with the questions that we have about him. So yeah, you just want to see him be in the right spot, not asking too many questions in the huddle of where he's supposed to be, not getting chewed out by Reggie Wayne when he goes to the sideline after coming off the field like we saw so often last year. You just want to see him be able to play the position and not be drowning in terms of being able to play the position because physically he can match up in pretty much every way. He has the capability to do it. He can be reliable catching the ball. He's shown that in the past. It's just answering those questions. And I guess, yeah, I'm glad we're seeing that about A.D. Mitchell. I just want the highlights that we see from A.D. Mitchell to be, oh man, he caught 8 passes. Every target went to him. He was there and caught it. I'd much rather see that from A.D. Mitchell than I would see the highlight one-handed grab because I kind of expect that he can do that. I know that he can do that. But if you're making a highlight grab 1 out of 8 catches and the other 7 you were in the wrong spot, then that's not doing much for you.
Yeah, A.D. Mitchell has got to step it up this year because if you add him to those aforementioned weapons that we talked about, that is a lot for a defense to handle. I mean, you're having to handle essentially 4 wide receivers that can each do something unique and do it well. And then you're handling a tight end, and then you're handling a ground attack that will punish you. I mean, that's a lot to handle. That's why the quarterback position is so important to figure out. So, but this next one, this is really good to hear because I know that some people were a little bit mixed, I guess, on what Indianapolis was doing when they selected this guy, kind of where they were going with it. Talented, but definitely had to play more than he did, or than he was expected to. And that's that Leatu Latu is primed for a big second year. He's been just working his tail off. He's been making it happen. He's going to be trusted with more, despite the fact that the Colts picked JT Tuimoloau. they are expecting Latu to take a year
Mhm.
two leap. They want him to make that happen. Tell me a little bit about Latu. How did you think that his 2024 went? And it's big news that he's looking good for a second year because he's also walking into year two with the same guy who's also walking into year two, and that's Charlie Partridge, his
Yeah.
position coach.
Yeah, it was a solid, if not exceptional, rookie season for Latu, which I think disappointed a few Colts fans and analysts out there, national people alike. Because you see Jared Verse getting all these numbers, and Latu was the first defensive player selected. Why is he not? Why is he not getting these pressures? Whatever. I think generally it takes some time for edge rushers to be able to make an impact, and the Jared Verse scenario or the situation that was going on last year is more of an exception to the rule than the rule, and you shouldn't really expect that. Regardless of where a guy is selected on the defensive line. So I think the Colts are probably pretty pleased, and we're pretty like feel like they're on track with Latu's development and what they got out of him last year and the amount that he played. I know they were probably expecting him to play a little less, but I mean, if you've got a guy who's 14th overall pick and he has to step up and play a little bit more, you're not going to be upset about that. Like he got some valuable experience out of that in year one. So I think year two, it'll slow down for him a little bit. I think this is one of those names that you're excited about seeing. I mean, it's non-contact, so defensive line, you're always going to be a little bit hesitant about the praise that they're getting. But it's good to see if you come into training camp and you're still hearing good things about Latu. When the ones are on the ones, he's going against Braden Smith and Bernard Ryman. So he's going up some legitimate competition at the offensive tackle position. And those are like the level of guys that I think he needs to improve on beating consistently. I think he had a lot of his pressures and his sacks were coming up against some lower level talent at offensive tackle, and he was pretty easily put away by some of the better tackles in the league, which that's why they're the better tackles in the league, but that's also where the edge defenders make their money is when they're coming off and being able to wreck the game against whatever competition's in front of them. So you want to see him make some noise when we go into training camp against Bernard Ryman and Braden Smith and these veteran guys who have a track record of being able to block people pretty well. He's definitely a name that I'm watching, excited to see pop up in here in minicamp, and one I'm going to be watching throughout training camp as well. Drake, I can't hear you.
I actually put myself on mute. That doesn't happen often, thank God. But you saw some special things from him last year. I mean, he had a couple critical sacks. He put the second most pressure on the team on quarterbacks,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're talking about he had 3 fumbles forced, which is good. Anybody would take 3 fumbles forced. So I'm not really too worried about his rookie season. I think that it's awesome that they're already seeing a leap forward in his development because Latu was drafted as the most technically sound defensive end. The biggest issue that people had with him was his injury history.
Yep.
And so I think that he's really going to be able to come into his own. I do think that Ebicom, if he can stay healthy and look anything like he did in 2023, I think that that's immensely going to help Latu.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, that season, Ebicom was a pressure machine. He was great against the run. He was first on the team in sacks, comes in, signs like a 3-year, $24, $27 million deal. NFL standards, people, that's cheap as hell.
Mm-hmm.
For what he did and what he was worth on the field, that's so cheap. And they got a deal out of that. So you've got Kwity Paye, you've got JT Tuamolia, you've got NASCAR package, Taekwon Lewis to get after the quarterback. I think that this is a competent and formidable defensive edge group if Latu can put it together.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's deep, and fingers crossed that it stays this deep going into final roster cuts, and you have to make some tough decisions on guys that you're letting go. But yeah, I think that just the Colts like to rotate guys a ton. I think maybe just by virtue of who you had last year, you didn't get to rotate maybe as much as you wanted to. And some guys were in situations where you'd rather have somebody else on the field, in all honesty. And you've got to have that flexibility here on the defensive side of the ball with the Colts, where if you're on rundowns, you've got guys like Taekwon Lewis and you could bump him outside, and Kwity Paye, you definitely want in there on rundowns, and you can bring in like Latu and Samson Ebukam for these passing down situations. Just kind of make them pass rush specialists and not really rely on them too much in terms of like an all around 80 snaps a game kind of guy. And you just kind of worry less about the quantity of the snaps and the quality of the snaps, and making sure they're fresh when they're coming in, which has always been a big focus on the Colts. So I think that if you give him a little bit more room to specialize in that pass rushing role, and not be thrown in as a rookie learning how to play all three downs on the defensive side of the ball, then I think you've got a little bit more chance of him making more impact on those pressures. And then yeah, we mentioned the amount of pressures he had, but really finishing those sacks is where he's going to be able to take that next step. I mean, that could come down to a whole big variety of things. I'm not going to question his motor on that. I feel like he's got the motor to finish those plays. So maybe it just comes down to maybe that's a split second quicker on the jump helps you to shave off a little bit of time getting to the quarterback. So it's just finishing those plays and converting those pressures into sacks, I think is going to be a big thing for him also.
Yeah, and he's got the talent to make it happen, man. And he's got the interior talent as well, Buckner and Stewart, to press quarterbacks right into his line of sight. So it's going to be fun. I do have a lot of faith, a lot of confidence in Latu. Bought his jersey for a reason, man. I think that there's something there. Of course, I also bought Jelani Woods' jersey. So, there's mistakes that can be made in life, people. So, but yeah, and this last one, before we get to the last subject we did want to talk about, this is a big one. Zaire Franklin is still hurt. Jalen Carlisle is still hurt. Of course, the Colts, keep this in mind, guys. They're not just going to they're going to take all the precautions they can with their stars and starters because there's nothing going on. Why would you risk an injury when you're in shorts? So keep that in mind, but the depth linebackers are getting starting opportunities. And by all regards, they're actually looking pretty good. So tell me a little bit about this group. And God forbid if there was an injury to Carlisle or Franklin or both, tell me a little bit about, your confidence and, kind of how camps looked for him, because it's a very important position.
Yeah, it's an important position, and I think it's important year one of a new defensive scheme to have a guy in the middle wearing that green dot on the helmet that you can kind of trust and rely on. I think Joe Bocci's a little bit more important than he normally would have been in that scenario because he's coming with familiarity with Lou Anarumo's defense and having played that position. So I imagine that being one of those names that's getting these starting opportunities with Carlisle and Franklin out, just has to do a lot with it. He already knows the playbook. He knows how to handle the playbook. You're not worried about him getting out of his depth in that situation. But in terms of him being actually on the field for live reps, I think you worry a little bit about that. I think probably Segun Alubi is that your next man up at linebacker. Your linebacker 3. When you've got all your guys healthy, but in this situation, your linebacker 1. I think I like him more as a linebacker 4. So seeing him thrust into linebacker 1 is alarming. And yeah, just really feels like a guy like Jermaine Pratt, even if maybe Jermaine Pratt wasn't the guy that they want to go with, someone around that level or a veteran that you can still bring in and kind of ease that transition from your starters to your backup seems like still a need on the Colts roster. But also the Colts get a little bullish on some of their guys, some of their young guys that they feel like they could take on bigger roles and take the next step. I think that focus right now is on guys like Cameron McGrone, Segun Alubi. Can they step up and kind of take hold of a role where they need some stability? But I think getting lost in that is that Jalen Carlisle is the one that they're replacing, and he's also somebody that also has to make a big leap and be able to take on that role full time. So I just think overall at the linebacker position, you've probably got most of the guys on that roster playing one slot above where they realistically should be in terms of how they're relied on right now. I think Jalen Carlisle is perfectly capable of being a 2, but I think you'd like that fallback option there. And he could be a 3 if you want it to be. Segun Alubi is the 3 right now. I'd like him better as a 4. So yeah, I just think you're missing that one piece that kind of fits everybody back into their slot. Kind of how we talked about Charvarius Ward in the cornerback room. When he came in at number 1, it just kind of bumped everybody down one peg. You feel a lot more comfortable with Jalen Jones not covering the top receiver or on every NFL team. You feel a lot more comfortable about Sam Womack being a replacement or a rotational guy, Justin Wally being a rotational guy. Instead of being these starters, I think that's something that the Colts could still do, and like we saw with the Jermaine Pratt deal with the Raiders, could do for a pretty small amount of money.
Yeah, and it's going to be good, for these guys to get experience because, like we mentioned, they weren't able to get
Yeah,
Pratt. Now, Paul says here, why did they not want Pratt? It's not to say that they didn't want him, Paul. He was released, so he can pick where he goes
yeah,
based off of the offers that are fielded to him. Maybe Indy didn't want to pay him as much as the Raiders offered. And, this is at the end of the day a job. And, the Colts really haven't shown that they're a Super Bowl contender. The Raiders just got Pete Carroll and Geno Smith.
hmm
Like, there's reason to go to the Raiders rather than the Colts if you're Jermaine Pratt. So that's not that they didn't want him. I highly believe they did. Especially, it just made way too much sense. But and that's another reason it's big is because they didn't pick up a linebacker. Still haven't picked up one. Who
hmm
knows what they'll do there? But just to kind of wrap up things here, so the Colts offseason programs, workouts that they've had so far, they've looked good. The team has looked good. The biggest question, though, it is that quarterback spot. And while you can say Daniel Jones has looked good, again, you've got a helmet on, no pads, shorts. It's very, I'm not saying you're not competing hard, but you're not out there leveling people,
yeah.
man. You're not creating too much pressure. I mean, uh, if there's pressure on Daniel Jones, he's not going to get touched. The play's going to end. And so there's a lot of things that he still needs to do to prove himself. But man, if the quarterback position can get sorted out, Noah, dare I say it, this is a team that has talent everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. The depth just feels a lot better. Um, I know there's still some question marks at some positions, but you like the guys that you have on the high end at a lot of these positions. I feel like you're really happy with your receiver room. You're happy with some depth you got behind your superstar running back and Jonathan Taylor. I think offensive line you may be a little bit more worried about just because of some guys that you're projecting to make that next step up. And then you've got, yeah, I think more depth on that defensive end, defensive tackle. You maybe have some questions. I think it's well rounded. The roster is starting to flesh itself out a little bit, and I think by the time we get to cut days, we'll see a couple positions. I think linebacker might be one that stands out. Safety might be one that stands out that maybe the Colts didn't do enough. But overall, I feel a lot better about the roster than I did probably at this point last season. It's just I think the optimism of what Anthony Richardson could have been last season shaded a little bit more or covered a little bit more holes that the Colts ended up having on the roster. So when the quarterback situation didn't work out, a lot of those holes were a little bit more glaring. And that's kind of what it does. I mean, if you've got a quarterback that can help you win games, some of these question marks that you had about the rest of the roster just the question marks they just decrease the font size a little bit on those question marks. You're not really worried about them as much. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I hate using that cop out. That's all that really is going to be driving how we feel about this team when it comes to the middle of the season, the end of the season is how the quarterback's playing, regardless of who it is. But I think that is what it comes down to. And I think overall throughout the roster, whatever quarterback it ends up being, I think they've got the surrounding offensive talent, they've got the surrounding defensive talent, the complementary defensive talent to be able to pull their weight and hold up their end of the bargain. So yeah, it just comes down to the QB at this point.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we'll have to see because that's arguably, if not the biggest, it's one of the biggest NFL headlines of the
Yeah.
offseason, and it will be. It'll remain that way. This last one is huge, absolutely massive. Of course, Jim Irsay did pass away, so that meant that there was a void in ownership, but that did not take long to fill, and that's
Yeah.
that Casey Irsay, Carly Irsay Gordon, and Kalen Jackson are officially the owners of the Indianapolis Colts. Now, this is something where I gotta say I'm really confident in these three ladies, man. They've been groomed into this role, and Casey Ursay and
hmm
Kalen, or excuse me, Casey Ursay Foyt and Kalen Jackson are going to have massive roles. But you're really looking at Carly Ursay Gordon because she was on the field wearing a headset, not barking orders, soaking up information. She's wildly intelligent,
Yeah.
and she's been watching the best example you can watch to run an NFL team, and that's Jim Irsay, who owned the team almost 3 decades.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about what you expect from these three new owners, And kind of, do you think that they're going to continue that culture that their dad built? Because it honestly seems like they're going to do everything they can to remain the way that Jim built it.
Yeah. I mean, they talked about that a lot and how much they value their dad's opinion, even when they're thinking about every decision that they're going to make in the future. They were talking about how they're definitely going to hear Jim's voice when they're making that decision, and I think that's a good sign for Colts fans. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are hoping for some change just because past results haven't been there, but. I think overall, to its core, the Colts organization has it right in most areas. It's an organization that people are proud to be a part of and proud to come back to, and we just need to follow it up with winning on the field. I thought it was interesting during the press conference. I forget who was asking the question about how they'll uh, kind of work things out if they disagree. So I think they were trying to kind of discern like a pecking order of what's the hierarchy there. I think just kind of by their titles, like you mentioned, you can kind of tell that's Carly Ursay Gordon as the owner and CEO. I think that means she's probably going to be making most of the football decisions or take the lead on most of those football decisions. But they did kind of teeter away from that and didn't really want to give a clear answer on who was 1, 2, and 3 in terms of how they're making those decisions. Yeah, and then I think one other thing that I thought was interesting when they were talking in their pressers, I think it was Kevin Bowen asked if Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, if Carly viewed them as tied at the hip in terms of their success, and she just straight up said she couldn't answer that right now, which is interesting. That I mean, I wouldn't expect him to say yeah they're tied at the hip, but she was just talking about how important that relationship is between a general manager and a head coach. And how they don't take that for granted. So I would imagine if you come to a situation where one or both have to go, uh, just keep in mind that the relationship between a head coach and a GM, they understand how important that is. So if they're bringing in a new GM, I don't know if they're going to want him kind of straddled with a head coach of the previous regime and kind of start off that relationship on maybe a rough foot. But it's all conjecture at this point. It's their first presser. They haven't had to make any real decisions. We're not really seeing how anything's shaken out. But overall, I think they're going to stay true to kind of what the tenets are that Jim Irsay kind of led and set out, and they're very proud of that and very proud of the Colts, and to keep them in Indianapolis, I think was another conversation that was going on where people were worried they were just gonna take the team and sell it and move it or do something as a bit of a money grab. But they've been bred in this organization their entire lives, and they've been bred in this city, and yeah, by all accounts, they seem very proud of being owners or stewards of what they said of the Indianapolis Colts. So I think it is. I'm on the optimistic side after that press conference and even before it.
Yeah, and they're not just some billionaire businessman, that or business person, if you will, that takes over a team for revenue, for income, and it's one of those things that you have to be proud of. The fact that they have that last name,
Yeah.
Ursay. Because Colts fans loved Jim Irsay. Like, they absolutely loved him. And the only thing that was a downside is sometimes he seemed a little stubborn to changing things.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things where you could have somebody that is just that savvy businessman, but they literally are, this is their business. The Indianapolis Colts is literally the business of
Yeah.
these three women, and they are going to take this job very serious. Now, I will say that it's going to be interesting to see how they do in their first year. It's a big change. Even though Carly Ursay Gordon is the head of football operations, she's been groomed for this role. She also hasn't done it literally yet. And so it's going to be really interesting. But hey, Colts fans that were scoffing at this, I can tell you it could have been way worse than
Yeah.
going with three women that have grown up with, one of the most loved NFL owners, who, by the way, did take his team to 2 Super Bowls and secured one.
Yeah. Yeah. The succession plan was in place for years. I mean, you couldn't have asked for I guess, a smoother transition, even if it was sooner than they were expecting, than Colts fans were expecting. They also mentioned Pete Ward as the the president or the chief operating officer. I feel like he's been for quite some time, and kind of Jim Irsay's right hand man and running the Colts, and how they said that he didn't give them any indication that he's trying to retire anytime soon. So I think you'll find a little bit of stability in that managerial staff or that front office staff in that sense, with Pete Ward sticking around to kind of carry on what he's been operating for the past however long he's been with the Colts, decades at this point. So so they've got the people around them, and they've got the history with the organization. I think Colts fans should rest easy with that.
Yeah, hey guys, it's a new era in Colts football, but just as it's a new era, it is literally critical. They have to win. They cannot screw up. There's such a thin line between Steichen, Ballard, and Richardson keeping their jobs, and others keeping those jobs and losing them. I mean, they can't screw up this year. So, but that's our show, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We had a super chat from Paul Wilson, a super chat from Truett. Thank you so much, guys. You guys are absolutely amazing for supporting this channel. And of course, I did want to say, if you want to like the Horseshoe Huddle, you can do it on Facebook. Follow Indianapolis Colts on SI. And of course, on X, we're at Colts _SI. So go follow us there. Subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube and click the bell to turn on all your notifications in case we have to go live with something or we have a scheduling change. If you want to listen, good news, subscribe to us on Apple, on Spotify, wherever else you listen to your podcast. So we will not be having a show next Thursday, but Noah's going to be on vacation. Noah is going to finally get out of Indiana. It's a great state, but sometimes you just got to leave it, to get a little bit of a different experience, right?
Yeah, you gotta leave before you can appreciate it. Truly, you can. The best thing about leaving is coming back, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, we will have a special guest co-hosting with me next Monday. We will have more Colts coverage for you guys. Just buckle in, folks, because like the next 40 to 45 days, boring. It's really, really, it's the most boring time for every football team and fan. So hang in there with us, but please have a wonderful Thursday. Have an absolutely amazing Friday and weekend, and we will be talking to you guys again on Monday night as always.